Hi everybody, this is Eugene O'Loughlin lecturing computing at the National College of Ireland, and welcome to my series of short videos on problem solving techniques. In video number 11 we're going to take a look at use cases. So first, what is a use case? Well, the role of the users of a business system is vitally important for people to understand. It's primarily a tool for modeling software systems, but it can also be used for any kind of business modeling where the requirements of the customer, who is the user, need to be established. And use cases were first used by the guy in the photograph here, Dr. Ivar Jakobsen in Ericsson in Sweden in 1986, and he's considered the father of use cases. So, a formal definition of a use case. A use case represents a series of interactions between an outside entity and a system, which ends by providing business value. So therefore it's a simple tool that examines a system by expressing the interactions between the system and its environment. In other words, what goes in and what comes out. In order to understand how use cases work, let's take a step back and look at things from the classic and the romantic point of view. If you've read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Robert Pirsig, which was published in 1994, you will know that he writes that two people can see a motorcycle in two ways. One type of person can see a motorcycle as the subsystems that make up the bike, in other words the engine, brakes and so on. And another person can see a motorcycle as the things that a person can do with it. In other words, go fast, go slow, weave in and out of traffic and so on. So there's different views of looking at the motorcycle, and this is important for us in the context of use cases. So the effectiveness of the use cases is that it helps us to look at the requirements activity so that we can see the system from the romantic point of view, in other words, what the system can do. They're only concerned with what the system can do for the users of that system. And finally here, this makes use cases extremely effective for conveying information to users because they cut out all the classic viewpoints and boil the requirements down to the barest essentials. So when we go to create a use case, the most important thing we need to know about are the actors. A use case describes the possible series of interactions between a system and its environment, and that concentrates on its business value. So the users of a system, which are usually people and sometimes other systems, are known as actors. An actor is an entity external to the system that interacts with the system to achieve our desired goal. For example, a person using an ATM is an actor interacting with the bank system. So by documenting how the actor uses the system, this gives you a better understanding of the requirements and the goals of the system. So they're very, very effective for communicating information. In addition to being people, actors can be other systems or even something like a date or a time. One of the most important things you need to remember when you're writing use cases is that you need to remove what we call implementation specific language. So there are some do's and don'ts when you're writing use cases. Look up some books about more examples of these, but a simple example here is a don't. In a use case you would not say that the clerk pushes the OK button. What you should say, the do, is that the clerk signifies the completion of a transaction, and this removes the assumption that there is a interface button on the user interface. And you'll find plenty more examples like that if you look up the literature on use cases. So how, first of all, do we create a use case? Well, there's two parts to doing it. We first of all draw a use case diagram, and secondly we write up the use case itself. So the diagram can be something as simple as this one here, which is a use case diagram for accessing a web page. So the key is we first of all identify the actors and what the use case is. So the actor in this case is the user, the person accessing the web page, and the use case is called access a web page. And we try as far as possible to write our use cases in as simple a language as possible. So this is our simplest use case diagram. Let's now look at the basic components of the use case itself. Now in a YouTube video I don't have the space or the resolution to fill out the components in detail, but these are the headings that you should use. First off, the name, which should have a unique name for each use case. List the actor or the actors that are involved in the use case, usually users, but they could be lots and lots of different people. What are the preconditions that you can assume to be true before the use case starts? The next part is the basic flow of events, and you must keep this very, very simple and just describe the basic flow of events that occur in the use case. In other words, what is happening. If there are alternative paths, you should list those, and these will show less common paths through the use case, and will also deal with things like error handling. Second last point here, exceptions. This is similar to the alternative path, but actually shows what happens when an error occurs. And finally, the post condition is any fact that the proposed solution can assume to be true after the use case ends. When you're doing this, only document what is relevant to the actor in each use case. If it's not relevant, leave it out. So let's take a look at a simple example. It's hard to show a complex example in a medium like YouTube here, but to get an understanding, let's look at withdrawing cash from a bank ATM that many people will be familiar with. So assume that a typical bank ATM supports the following processes: that a customer uses the bank ATM for cash withdrawal. There is a recording of all ATM transactions by a central computer. And the third process is that the ATM is maintained by an engineer, and this includes replenishing cash by a security agent. So there are several things happening here. So let's see if we can first of all identify what the use cases are. So in our use case diagram here, we can see that there are three use cases: withdraw cash, record transactions, and maintain ATM. And we can identify the actors from the description we've just seen as the customer, user. Another user is, or an actor is, a central computer, engineer, and a security agent. And you can see in the diagram here which user interacts with which use case. So the customer, for example, only interacts with the use case withdraw cash. A customer doesn't interact with record transactions or maintain the ATM. You can see that the central computer interacts with the two use cases, but not with the third, the maintain ATM. And that the engineers and the security agents only interact with the maintain ATM. So this gives us an overview of who is using the systems, what part of the systems are being used, and as you can see, we're not concentrating at all on how the systems are made or what the components of them are. So we're looking at things from a very, very high level from the point of view of a user. So if we take our headings that we've had previously, our name is for the first use case could be withdraw cash. I know there are three use cases here, but let's just take a look at the first one, withdraw cash. The actors are the customers and the central computer. The precondition would be something like the customer must have a valid ATM. The basic flow of events would be put your card into the machine, specify if a receipt is required, enter the amount of cash to withdraw. The ATM will check if you've got the cash in your account. Cash is dispensed to the customer, and the receipt is dispensed to the customer. No implementation specific language there. We can give whatever the alternative paths are there. For example, if the customer doesn't want the receipt, we can also enter in the exceptions. For example, if an incorrect PIN number is entered. And the post condition in this case is that the account is updated by a central computer. Thank you for your attention in this video. I hope you found this useful. If you're interested in this and other problem solving techniques, check out my new book, An Introduction to Business Systems Analysis, which is about problem solving techniques and strategies. Use cases and other strategies are covered in this book, which is available from Amazon and other online bookstores. Once again, thank you for your attention.